overall, what it means is that the director has more ability to convey things. For example, color can be used to tell a message, okay? You can have themes in color. You can have somebody who always dresses in dark, and you might decide that dark means mysterious or evil, right? Or he's the lone hero or heroine. And so that person wears dark colors and is offset from everyone else. Or they wear light colors. They maybe are more angelic, right? Or whatever it is, or ghostly-like. They wear kind of white and they're more like a spirit, okay? Or you can use colors to connote an overall feeling of a part of a movie. Let's say the movie is summer, so all the colors are rich. They're very yellow and orange, you know, it's very sunny. Or it's winter, again, it's very white, or fall colors with oranges and reds. So you can use those colors. Or you can use one specific color. For example, James Dean's most famous film, it's made by a man named Nicholas Ray, it's called Rebel Without a Cause. He decides that the color red is going to mean violence, and it's going to mean potentially death. So when you see red, it means danger and violence, and he's very specific about that. That film was intended for black and white, and then when it changed to color, he was given this opportunity to use the color in a really specific way. Sometimes it's used to make a character stand out just in general. If you have an actress that you want to make sure everyone is always seeing in the scene, then she can wear brighter colors or darker colors or just more mysterious colors. So you can use it like that as well. Some people use it as a splash. The most famous example is Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List, which is a black and white film, only he creates a character, a little girl who's wearing red. And she's very easy to spot when you see her. And he's doing that to basically, he's making a point about this little girl and what she means to this atrocity that is taking place. And she shows up and you see her and it has an impact on you. In aspect ratio, this changes a lot for directors. Again, directors are having to work inside this square. They want to frame things up, they got to frame it inside a box. Now they have much more room. And this is amazing because they frequently now, they have 3 different areas of the screen that they can play with. They can have some action going on way over here, while people are talking in the middle, right? So maybe you're supposed to be focusing on this, but something interesting is going off on either corner. So things that you could not do before, you're now able to convey because the screen is wider. This one has a fascinating turn because later, when these films start to show up on TV, what happens is the TV is square, as we've been discussing, and they haven't really figured out this idea of what we call letterbox, right? Where you have black here and here, and you see the whole movie in the aspect ratio in which it's intended. So what they do is, and by they, I mean the TV, is they do something called pan and scan. Pan and scan is basically that they create a box in the middle of the movie, and then if something important is going on over there, they computer generated move it over. They just move over the view. So it's basically like if you just were filming a film, you know, you had your phone and you were filming a film and you just put it in the middle, and then every time something happened over here that was more important than the middle, you just move it over, mechanically move it over. Well, you can see this is not the director's intent. In fact, several directors, Woody Allen being the most famous, fought this and said, you can't put my film on television because this pan and scan, that is not my choice. You are ruining my choice, which eventually led to the whole idea of having a letterbox. Like, people will get used to it. As TVs got bigger, they didn't mind the black bars here and here. TVs now look more like this aspect ratio. But when they were square, the pan and scan came. And this is interesting because technology could take the decision that directors made out of their hands. In terms of color, the most famous is called colorization. So a man named Ted Turner, who I mentioned earlier, who bought Gone with the Wind way back, decided that a whole bunch of black and white films that he came into his possession through a big acquisition, would be more popular if they were in color. That younger people, and it's mostly true, that younger people didn't want to watch black and white films. So he thought, what I'll do is I will colorize them. I will use a computer that will basically, we will assign colors to people and clothes, and then it will change the entire film to add color to whatever kind of color we suggest. Well, there are two major problems with this, besides the fact that it takes away what the director had intended in the first place. The first is when cinematographers, the people who are in charge of making sure the film looks like the director wants it to, are lighting a specific scene and it's in black and white, they know that. So they are creating the right light and shadow for black and white, not for color. And that light and shadow gets completely distorted and taken out of the way, the context that the director had intended in the cinematographer, because they've just splashed color on it. But the other problem is that the colors aren't real. For example, everyone who's white or everyone who's black or everyone who's Latino or everyone who's Asian in the film all has the same tint on their face. White people all have the same tan. Everyone who is black has the same color of skin. It's just ridiculous, and at some point you just start to notice if you lined up all the characters based on what we would think is their race, their skin color is identical. So no one has any real skin tone. Also, a lot of the colors are just made up, like, oh, we don't remember what his jacket was, so we'll just make it blue, and we'll make her dress red, and we'll just do that. Well, you can see the problems with all of these things. They just change what the director had intended, and it doesn't look right. And so this idea, this colorization, never took off. Only a couple of films you can even find anymore that were colorized, the most famous of which are a couple of Christmas movies. A Miracle on 34th Street, you can still buy the black and white and color version, and It's a Wonderful Life, both Christmas films. And I think it's because they still are shown all the time, so you can get a color version of them. The most interesting thing that colorization did was it prompted people to have such outrage that the government started to basically establish a committee that would pick certain films that they deemed to be of important national importance, and those films became protected by the government, meaning that you could not alter them in any way. So some of the most famous films, if you wanted to colorize them, you couldn't because they are now protected. And that's because people started to realize these films as art forms, right, that should be protected. So these pieces of art now are being protected by the government. And so colorization, in a weird way, brought that out. 3D, on the other hand, directors have had a choice in this, but like I mentioned before, not many films are actually created for 3D. We had a little run there, but a lot of the 3D films you see now are made in 2D and then transferred over into 3D. In fact, I read an interview with the cinematographer for the new Blade Runner who said, yeah, the 3D looks okay, but I didn't make this film for 3D. I would go see it in 2D, because he lit the whole film for 3D. And he said it very clearly, it's very muddy in 3D. Again, it's not like Avatar, where James Cameron designed every shot, all the look, to be in 3D, right? You could see it in 2D, but that was not the intention, okay? So in all of these cases, what we are thinking about is how it helps the director have more language to tell the story, right? And in what ways those things have been impacted. So it's interesting because these all came in response to TV. They helped directors tremendously, but at the same time, as technology advanced, some of these decisions were taken away from directors to re-show these films on television. It shows you just the incredible power of TV on all of these industries, particularly film.